Hello, hello. Good morning. Sanbona, Salbona, Dumela, Dumelang. Goeiemorgen. It will always be morning on the show. Hello and welcome to Rural Living and Innovation. I am Anelengoya, umachobozo mhlanga vilindlela, ukusha uthatha nyawo uzuthuphan. Thank you for joining me. If you've watched our other episodes, you are the best. Hallelujah. If you haven't watched our other episodes, check them out. My other episodes, check them out. I was considering naming it rural embarrassment, but I felt like that's so expected. But I think it's like it's a conversation about rural pride versus like rural embarrassment or shame. Like ukuba namahloni. There's a shongololo. Why do they like? You know when you kahlel masusa songololo, why does it always poop? It's not called a caterpillar, the thing with like a million feet. It's not a millipede, is it? But like if you do like move it out of the way and it curls up, it always poops. Why? Clearly, I've cooked enough of them. So clearly, I don't have any shame about being in the rules at this particular juncture. I do sometimes. I still do. But I thought about like naming it rural embarrassment, and then I was like, it's so like expected to expect like people to be ashamed of coming from the rurals or to like not want to share like their rural experiences because it's so backwards and underdeveloped, and it's like, ooh, keep that to yourself and only share when you're like in the city. And I'm guilty of that. I've in my personal profiles and my general social media, I've tried to be as honest as possible about my lived experiences, which is a reflection of both urban and rural experiences. Like sometimes we'll share the episode in Pinifa, because like whatever. You'll hear chickens in the background because it is what it is. Exactly. You might see like random buckets or like a shed somewhere, and Angnandaba, because like it is what it is. It was what like innovation at this point has for me. So, but like often I feel like there's a natural expectation or something for that, like we should be ashamed of the rurals, or we should be aspiring to living to doing more than the rurals, at some point, like you are expected to be like pushing for the suburbs, man. You want a house in the suburbs, you want a house or a flat or something in the suburbs. Rather be in the back room, it's somewhere and be eating and washing in the same place than be in the rurals, like, and I feel like I've started to interrogate that, and I started to interrogate that like whole thing of rural perceptions when I first bumped into the idea of poverty porn. And because like, when they do these like campaigns of like save Africa or save the children, whatever, township, whatever, like it's always like it's always played across as sad or savage or some level of poverty in the situation. And this was when I was in university, and like when I see some of the photos, I'd be like, but like I know people like this. I've been this kid and I've been like joyful and happy, and I haven't felt poor. And the only reason like I'm starting to feel poor is because of this media that I've been consuming or seeing. And I did not want, not I didn't want to, I couldn't afford to be embarrassed of where I came from, because I didn't have anything else. Like we had, at some point we had a house in Pinetown, but I never saw that as home. I've always just been like, we have a house in Pinetown. But this has always been home. This has always been like the long-term plan. And even in Pinetown, it's like in Nazareth, and it's more of a township than a rural area, and it's more of a township than a suburban area. And it just, for me, I've never seen it as a long term where I want to spend, the rest of my life. As much as like I wanted to be able to have access to it, maybe, and use it to like have access to the city, but like not for long term living. We eventually sold the house, but this has always been home for me. So, and my mom has always been here. My dad has always been here. He's been investing in us being home. Everybody's been investing in like making this like a very comfortable space for us to live in. So I couldn't afford to be embarrassed about where I came from, even though I went to like, so sort of like I don't even know what to compare it to. It is rural in a way, but it's rural in a way that is not, you wouldn't think it's, yeah, it's just rural in a way that is different from this. It's rural in a way that has more this what. It is a town more than a rural space. So that's when I lived, and then there was a township nearby, and then just that the environment grooms you to fear the nearby townships, and then at some point you start thinking, aye, man, something's beating the water here, because like I kind of know these people. As much as there are things that are happening in that particular like environment that were like dangerous and stuff, but there's also no law, like no structured community like discipline and stuff, and things happen. So that's why the space enables that. And if you don't interrogate why you're told not to go into the space, you don't get any value from it. And because like I could see myself in those people, I couldn't, because I was just like, if that is West, then I'm from West, and like then like clearly then I'm not even supposed to be here. So I couldn't afford to be ashamed of the space. And I love I call myself a real baby, but I've got to consider calling this channel Real Babies Worldwide. But I love being a real baby, and like sometimes when people when you say that with like joy, people are kind of like, wait, what? Isn't that like hard and tough and what? Like I feel like it's not any more challenging than being in the suburbs were. And I've been in the suburbs, and it's been rough, so rough, because I didn't have community, and at least I have community here. Like in the space that I was in, like it was a space where you can't even nana usawut. Nanu sawut. I wasn't your nanu sawut. You can't even ask your neighbor for salt, because it's just like, bro, why are you here if you can afford salt? And I found that to be a very toxic environment, and it as much as I grew and learned from that space, it wasn't healthy for me. And also, it's important to understand like where this like shame comes from, kind of, because people were intentionally moved closer to the Land Act. Like when you talk about like development in South Africa, for me it's very difficult to remove myself from the Land Act and not see it like as a personal matter. Because people will intentionally move closer to the city or away from the city to serve whatever purposes at that time. And so people are clustered in certain places, and a lot of resources were clustered towards like developing opportunities in that space. So, and the people have but there weren't enough opportunities for those people, and now it's just there's a lot going on. And then in the rural context, there's just like there's not a lot of people, so there's not nothing coming in. So we want to move to the city. So there's also then like there's now challenges of rural urban migration, and I think part of the underlying cause of rural urban migration or the increase in rural urban migration is because people aren't seeing a lot of opportunities in the rural space, and there isn't a lot of resources directed at rural innovation and development. There are really a lot of efforts, but at a structural and community level, I haven't seen any. Not in my village, Shem. I haven't seen any in my village. And so people are going to where the resources and the infrastructure are, and we can't blame them really. And so the stereotypes that like come that are, like that the rurals should come with a bit of shame are sort of valid in the fact that like you don't have a lot of resources, but like why should I be ashamed of that? Like it's not like you woke up early, bruh, and like got the first worm. So why should we be ashamed? Why should we be aspiring to like migrate to the? Why shouldn't we be like this? Why shouldn't be an actual concentrated effort to develop the rural areas outside of like political campaigning and election campaigning? You know, so as much as those stereotypes like have a basis in that, like we know how we got here. Not interrogating those stereotypes is more dangerous because we run the risk of perpetrating those stereotypes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't help us in any way. It really doesn't help us in any way. In fact, if you are saying there's so much opportunity in the city, I'll move to the city. Like, don't you think I could take your opportunities because like I'll come at a much higher, I won't have negotiating power. So it's like when people don't invest in raw innovation, it's just shooting themselves in the foot because the better experiences are just reserved for the top few, and then the general resources have to be shared among a lot of people. So because like the rural is like because the rural space is interpreted as less than or worse than the city experience or the urban experience. This also then translates to African urban experiences are not the same as Western urban experiences. And do we see how we are repeating a pattern here? It's like it's a lot of self-hatred actually. It's just a lot of self-hatred. And because we the rural experience, like it's like there's nothing good about it. We want to mirror everything about the urban experiences, but because the resources for the infrastructure are not there, we just end up in replicating the easiest things about the urban experience, and that's often just crime, substance abuse, like those things, idleness, when actually there's so much to do in the rural areas. People used to farm with cattle. You guys, I don't even want to get into it. I don't even want to get into it because, like, should people really be going to the city and looking for jobs when, like, there are so many natural currencies and there are so many ways of replicating them? Like, shouldn't we be using like innovation to do more in the space and then sell resources or systems to urban spaces? That makes more sense for me. So if we had pride, like everybody, if we had pride in the rural experience, if we had pride in the African context, in the African experience, and we were not trying to mirror everything Western about our experiences, there are some learnings from the Western experiences that definitely were valuable and that we can use, but like there's no need for us to replicate systems. There's no need for us to replicate systems. And I'm interested in more in curating like Richmond innovation than I am in curating global reaching. If a Richmond innovation reaches the globe, great, but like I want to better my lived experience more than I want to reach the world personally. And I hope like that kind of talks to whoever, if you're from the rurals, that like you relate to that, and like you can start thinking about like building wherever you're from, if you do have, or wherever you are, if you do live in the rural context. And if you're not from the rural context, it's just like, how actually do you carry a conversation about anything related to the rurals? Do you have anything positive to say? And if nothing you have to say is positive, it's like, is it second-hand information or is it first-hand information? And if it's not first-hand information, make an effort to get that first-hand information, even if it's just once, and you're like, no, god damn it, like I didn't like 1 2 3 and keep it at that. But keep it your experience. Don't make it a whole, this is what rural experiences are about. If you didn't have a good experience, that's your experience and it's not everybody's. And don't categorize, because there's like coffee shops and stuff that are on a farm and it's one house, and people won't think of that as the rurals. But because if you look at the characteristics, that's the rurals. Just because it has like a nice balcony and the borehole doesn't make it any less rural than this rural. So yeah, let's just interrogate our perceptions of what like rural living means, and like whether or not it makes it better or worse. If it didn't work for you, it doesn't mean the whole thing is better or worse, and that village doesn't mean like it's all the same everywhere. So yeah. I hope this was like some kind of structured rambling and it was worthwhile for the like I think 20 minutes now. I hoped it would be like around 10. Thank you for watching this far, if you got this far, and I hope you subscribe, because clearly it's worth it for you. And I hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.